My guests today are Irish filmmakers Luke and Jake Morgan, and Luke's films have been screened at festivals all over the world, from South Africa and Japan, the USA to Ireland's premier festivals. Now, Luke was the winner of the Best Actor Award at Worcester Film Festival in 2021 and 2022, nominated for the Discovery Award at the Dublin International Film Festival in 2020, and he is also an award-winning published poet. Now, Jake Morgan is a composer, conductor, and producer from Ireland who specializes in creating original music and audio for film, theater, and video games. And Jake was the producer and composer of the multi-award winning short film, The Boat, which has been qualified for an Academy Award. And he is the co-founder of Morgan Brothers and is based in Galway, Ireland. Now, their newest short film, The Boat, is based on a true story. Now, when a young girl grows up, she wants to be a boat maker just like her father. But when he discovers that she is showing the early symptoms of leprosy, he must make a devastating choice. Produced and shot on location in Nepal with the Mission to End Leprosy organization, The Boat aims to raise awareness about the crushing threat leprosy still carries in rural communities even today. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmakers Luke and Jake Morgan and their incredible Oscar-qualifying short film, The Boat, to the show. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Ward.
How are you, Ward? How's it going?
Hey, I am doing great, and wow, I watched your film, The Boat, and literally fell in love with this incredible story, and to learn that this was based on a true story. But before we get into this amazing film, for both of you, what inspired both of you to get into filmmaking?
Well, we've been making films since we were young children. We didn't have a TV when we were growing up. We didn't have TV channels. So we had to find a way to pass the time together. We're brothers,
Yeah,
as you can see. He's basically just me upside down.
with the hair on the top.
And our parents had this big VCR recorder when we were younger, and it recorded directly onto tape. And we didn't have editing software or anything, so we had to, we'd film
Edit
a
in
scene.
camera.
Yeah, we did our in-camera editing. We used to make films with our Beanie Baby toys, with our friend Joseph. So that's how we got into it. We didn't get into it to like try and impress girls or to get stuff even watched. We just did it because we were bored, and we did it for the love of it and the love of creating together. And we've carried that love through now to the present day. Almost 25 years later, and here we are. We have a company in Galway, Ireland, called Morgan Brothers.
Yeah, and it seems like that with your company, because your director, producer, Jake's composer, it's really like an in-house operation, isn't it?
Yeah, like we have a pack that we run with and have run with down through the years, but we also love working with new people as well. So the traditional way of working together is that I would direct and write, Jake would produce and compose. But like any filmmaker knows, once the cameras start rolling, everybody does a bit of everything. It's all hands on deck, and it certainly was all hands on deck for this short film, The Boat. We had a small team of just 6 people from Ireland and about 6 people from Nepal as well.
Yeah, one thing I love about Ireland is that it has a very strong filmmaking community, and some of the best films come out of Ireland.
Yes, well, look,
We're a nation of storytellers and poets and bards, so I suppose
yeah,
it's our tradition, I guess.
I suppose like a country with the level of misery in our past as
Yeah.
Ireland and the amount of rain every time you look out the window,
Yeah.
you got to find some way to cheer yourself up,
Yeah,
or at
I've
least
spent
indulge.
I've spent a few nights or evenings, I should say. Well, nights at evenings that turned into nights in the pubs of the small
That
towns
turned
in
into mornings.
Ireland. And you're right, there is tons of stories to tell.
Yes, every Egypt has a story in Ireland. If you throw a stone down Shop Street in Galway, you'll hit a poet.
Yeah, for
So that's
sure.
what they say.
Well, I love that, but let's talk about this incredible short film, The Boat. Now, this is based on a true story. How did you first learn about leprosy and also team up and collaborate with the Mission to End Leprosy organization?
Well, the CEO of the Mission to End Leprosy is an Irishman, Ken Gibson, and the charity is headquartered in Dublin. So we had a videography business before we started to do creative producing full time, and we were doing some contract work for the Mission to End Leprosy, and we heard this story from the mouth of Ken Gibson about Dhuckia, a young girl who gets leprosy. And to be honest, our first reaction to the story was, is leprosy still out there? Is it still a thing? Is it still real? Because like many people we tell this story to, that is their first reaction. They don't realize that leprosy is actually still in circulation, particularly in poor communities around the world.
It's a biblical sort of disease, or it's seen as that, you know.
But it's still very much an issue in some parts of the world. And even though it is curable and is very relatively cheap and easy to cure and treat, there are still many communities around the world that suffer from it. And actually, the connection with Ireland goes deeper than that. The cure for leprosy was found in Ireland in Trinity College in the 80s. So we wanted to capitalize on this legacy that Ireland has and this connection Ireland has with leprosy in teaming up with the Mission to End Leprosy in order to create this short film. And the reason we made a short film rather than a documentary was that films, narrative films, speak to the heart. And we believe that cinema has the ability to change the world. And people are motivated to act when their heart is spoken to, more so than when their head is spoken to. So that is how this came about.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I was like you. In the very beginning, I'm like, leprosy, that is still around. And so I went to uh, the Mission to End Leprosy's website and just started reading all of these things that, that I think was is a couple of million people, or no, I should say it's what, every 2 minutes someone ends up with leprosy. And I'm thinking, we live in a modern era of medicine. And I had to think back because here in the United States, I should have looked up the year, but I'm going to say it could be 150 years. So I'm in Texas, and then there's a state right next to us, Louisiana. Off the coast of Louisiana, they had an island where if you got leprosy, you were cast out of society and you were shipped to this island so that way you wouldn't infect the rest of the population. And to think that this disease is still prevalent today is extremely shocking. And I mean, when you created this film, what kind of research did you do to learn about leprosy? Uh, did you learn about leprosy before you wrote the script?
Well, we had the joy of working with the Mission to End Leprosy, who are the charity, who are committed to ending. I mean, the clue is in the title.
Yeah.
They are committing to ending the disease and eradicating it entirely. So we didn't feel like we needed the level of expertise in order to, because they served as executive producers on the film. So we were more concerned with the creative aspect and what we could bring to the table in what we do, which is the creative filmmaking component of the exercise. So casting, working with actors, Jake designing the music in order to bring people into the world of these characters and create a strain of imaginal empathy between the audience and the characters in order to really kind of raise awareness about the issue. But while we were in Nepal, we visited a leprosy hospital, Andaman Hospital in Nepal.
And it was the actual hospital that Dhuckia was brought to as well. So it's the true story, where she ended up.
But we got to meet a lot of the patients that were being treated there with leprosy, and we got to learn more about the disease. And unfortunately, there is still a massive taboo attached to the disease. There are still like, village communities where if you get leprosy, that can spell the end of your engagement or your participation in the society, and you are exiled, just like you say there, to that island off the coast of Louisiana. There are many such islands all over the world. I know there's one off the coast of Greece, which is quite famous. And then also Hawaii, there was a leper colony in Hawaii. But yeah, so basically we wanted to fuse the knowledge and the sort of factual component of what we were doing and raising awareness with the more emotive and creative task of making the film, because those, while they work in harmony when the thing comes together, when we were actually making the film, were very different tasks.
Yeah, I can see that because there are elements and there's scenes in this film that shows that the lack of education about leprosy. And as I was studying more about this disease, I was actually surprised because leprosy itself is spread through prolonged close contact with an untreated person who has leprosy, but it's usually through respiratory droplets, not by touch, which I found very interesting because most people think that it's, if you touch somebody, they're going to get leprosy. And they're not thinking that
Yes.
it's an actual airborne type disease. And that also played into the fact that when you filmed this in Nepal and the way the scenes are shot, I went back after I was doing some research with the mission to end leprosy. I went back and watched the film again. And then I started seeing the scenes and I went, see, most of the reactions is based on touch. But nobody realizes that because of the respiratory transmission to infection, many of these communities, they're outdoor communities, they're outside. So the chances of getting leprosy from one who is infected with it outside is probably pretty small. But it's being inside a dwelling that probably increases their risk.
Yeah, and I believe you have to be exposed for like weeks to actually contract it as well. It's not like an instant thing, and only like a small percentage of the population have the DNA to contract leprosy. So it's not very contagious really at all.
Yeah, I was surprised that there was actually a cure, and then you brought up the fact that the cure was actually found, or the facility in Ireland found the cure for leprosy back in the 1980s. Did you do any research to know this? Those that have leprosy and they do have an access to the medication, do you have to take it on the onset or can they take it in the middle or a late stage of leprosy?
Yeah, I think the medication can be administered at any stage of leprosy. Um, they're obviously not going to, the damage that's been done to their nerves and the limbs
Won't be repaired.
won't be repaired, but the
It stops
disease
the spread. Yeah.
stops the spread of the disease. So, like, we met patients in all different stages of the disease when we visited an Andaman hospital in Nepal, and many were, once they catch it, um, then you're in a very good place, and your prospects of survival and being cured are very high.
Now, is the administration of the treatment, is it for a period of time or do they need to be taking the medication for the rest of their life?
It's for a period of time, and I do believe that people, can be released from the hospital after a period of a couple of months. I think it depends on how severe and how early onset the disease has been. But yeah, as far as I know, it's once it's cured until further notice.
So, why is it so difficult for a lot of these communities around the world? Because I was surprised on the areas of the world that still deal with leprosy. Why is the medication out of reach for many?
Well, there's a couple of different reasons why it's difficult for people to get access to the cure. Firstly, it's sanitation. So this is not a discriminatory disease. Anybody can get leprosy, or the 5% as Jake who have the genome can get leprosy. But it's communities where there is not good sanitation and healthy living conditions where it is rife. And then a lot of the people who contract leprosy would be undocumented, full stop. So it's very difficult to get a grasp on the scale of the disease in any particular region, because you can't count a case who isn't being counted by their own government as being alive in the first place. And then unfortunately, there are parts in the world that are quite remote where, the disease is seen as a curse, still, and that's something that's been passed down through generation to generation. It was believed that leprosy was a curse, and that, if you were to contract leprosy, you were cursed. And the only way to deal with it was to banish you or to exile you from a community. And we see that a lot in regions of Africa with witch doctors and stuff. It is still an issue in certain places in the world where there isn't the level of access to education about these matters as there might be in other places. And that's what broke our heart and encouraged us to get involved in the first place, because the disease is so easily treated and is so cheap to treat. We think it's a shame that there's anybody out there at the moment who is suffering from this disease.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this film was an eye opener, especially in the fact to realize that leprosy, considered one of the oldest diseases in all the world, is still a major problem. Even in the Bible, you know, when he would heal a leper, he told the leper, "Go show yourself to the priest to prove that you were healed, so that way you could go back to society." For some of these people who do take the medication and get cured of leprosy, do they have a hard time getting back into society?
Absolutely. Ken Gibson, the CEO of the Mission Down Leprosy, tells a famous story about a girl he met who, when she was a kid, met Princess Diana. Princess Diana visited one of the leprosy mission hospitals in India a couple of years ago. And she shook the hand of a little girl famously with leprosy. Ken met this girl as an adult, and this woman told him that her own husband and her kids did not know that she had met Princess Diana, because for them to have known that she had met Princess Diana, she would have needed to tell them that she had leprosy. So even though she had grown up and was completely cured of leprosy, the taboo was so strong and such that she had to keep it a secret that she had ever had it in the first place.
That's almost like treating people who are HIV positive.
Yes, yeah. There is definitely a comparison with the
Yeah,
stigma and
The taboo, yeah.
yeah.
there very much so. And I want to talk about this film without giving too much away. Because for those that have the opportunity to see the boat, I want them to see this and just absorb this film and its meaning. The cinematography is absolutely beautiful. You couldn't have done any better. You had a perfect backdrop by filming in Nepal, so half the job was done. The rest of it was all camera work
don't
and
don't tell Lakshika that.
but it takes the right cinematographer to bring that beauty out, but it also showcased the beauty and the tragedy of the story. When I found out that Jake was joining us, I had to go back to rewatch elements of the film because I wanted my ears to absorb the music score, which again, that is also beautiful. But more importantly, the music score sets the tone of certain scenes. Especially where the father suspected, while everybody's around and having fun around the campfire, he was suspecting that, does my daughter have leprosy. And then there's the scene where he's testing her later that evening, and then the music plays in to the importance of the moment. Um, it makes the audience nervous. And for you, Jake, when you look at a scene, where does that creativity come from to create the right score to tell the rest of the story?
Well, really, it's kind of a gut feeling, you know. And me and Luke chat about it because Luke's the director of the film. So we'd look through the film and we'd kind of spot what emotions need to be brought out at any given moment, and how they should be brought out. We talk about pace, we talk about tone, we talk about instrumentation, all of that sort of crack. And yeah, no, that's how we start anyway. And then it just kind of takes a bit of trial and error, you know, throwing some music down and then redoing it if it's not right, and redoing it again, and just honing it.
Yeah, it's amazing that when people watch film, there are films that people will watch, and sometimes the music just goes completely over their head because they're not paying attention to it. But this film, it's the acting, it's the music score, um, it's the cinematography, it's the camera movements that tell this story. And you brought something up that I noticed in this film. The pacing of this film is excellent. I mean, every frame is important. There's nothing slow because the audience is walking along their journey. So we're taken for this ride with the father and the daughter, and we don't know where this is going. We don't know how it's going to end, and so it works so well, which I can see why when I watch this film, I understand why you're Oscar qualified, extremely well deserved, and
Thank you very much.
you're very welcome. Now, how did you come to cast the film? Were the actors native to Nepal?
That's right, yeah. Sri Ram Dahal and his daughter, his real life daughter, Teju Sui,
Yeah.
are from Kathmandu in Nepal. So we cast the film with the help of our line producing team, who were based on the ground in Nepal. That would be Dinesh and Manood. And they were fantastic help. So we sat through a couple of sessions, casting sessions, with a couple of different actors, combinations of older gentlemen and young girls. But we weren't convinced that we had found our Dhuckia and Raoul so we asked them to keep searching, and in walked Shri and Teju. And we knew just through the screen, anybody who makes films will agree that it really is a gut thing. Jay talked about the gut thing. When somebody walks into the room, you can see them. And it was actually, we were so moved by, in particular, the dad character, Raoul, Shri, who plays the Raoul, that we went and rewrote the character in the script to suit this man's temperament. We found he had such a joyous nature about him, carefree, kind, funny face. The original character in the script was quite forlorn, quite dour, quite down in the dumps all the time. But it was actually seeing Shri that, opened up this possibility that, oh no, what if this character is a very happy-go-lucky dad who is fun-loving? And that makes it even more heartbreaking, doesn't it? So yeah, seeing Shri and Teju come into the casting room, the virtual casting room, just like what you're experiencing here, we were able to see the potential for those actors in the roles that we cast them in. And honestly, we're so glad that we did cast them, because the film is as powerful as it is down to Shri and Teju.
And I'm glad that you waited to find the right actors for this. I went back and
Yes.
I think it's on the Mission to End Leprosy's website. I think it shows Dhuckia's a picture of her real father, and the demeanor on his face is very, very stern. And by having an actor that has this kindness, this compassion, this love, this joy, this very easygoing demeanor about him, you're right. it makes the ending far more heartbreaking, because if he came across as a villain, then people were like, fine. But no,
Yeah.
now it's like, you have it's again, it's like your log line. It's making that devastating decision, and we feel that in this film. Now, for both of you, did you have any challenges filming in Nepal?
Oh, big time. Yeah, actually,
Plenty.
the weather, we were there for a month. And, well, firstly, none of the cast and very few of the Nepali crew spoke English. And none of our crew from Ireland spoke Nepali. So it's problem number one. Now, we joke afterwards that we both spoke the common language of filmmaking. But of course, we only wheeled that one out for the interviews.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we didn't always have a translator on set. Now, it actually didn't end up being as much of a problem as we thought it was going to be initially, because Shri and Teju are such artists. These are the two actors that, my notes sometimes were, and I realize that a director's notes sometimes and often will be quite irrelevant if you're working with a really, really good actor who knows. Because a lot of the time we get to the end of a take and I call cut, and it would just be a look that would, that would happen between myself and either Shri or Teju, and they would know. They'd know the note straight away, because they themselves are artists and they would know how to. And it made me realize that actually, when I am directing in English, I talk a lot of nonsense. So I wasn't able to do that if I didn't speak their English. So my communication had to be reduced down to the bare essence of what I wanted to say. So a lot of it was through hand signals and then intuition and body language. And then the second major challenge we had was, and I'll let Jake tell you this story, we almost drowned in quicksand when we were filming the last scene.
Yeah, so the last scene where the fire, there's a boat on fire and it's during kind of low light. So we were worried, first of all, about the low light because the cameras needed the light to sort of film. Then the fire, we didn't want the boat to burn and sink, or even just the fire to go out. So we had to get a couple of different angles, and we were limited with one camera. And we started off with a wide shot from the other side of the bank of this, it was like a river, I suppose, that leads out into this big bay, and so we got that, and we had to race then to get around onto the other side of the river essentially, and we knew there was a crossing, but it was going to be like a 20-minute walk with heavy gear. So we decided we'd take a shortcut because it looked shallow enough through the through the river, but it turns out that underneath the riverbed there was quicksand. So I was following Luke, who was talking
about the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, it was carrying the camera, and we were kind of soft jogging, and it was an air of panic. So we walked through. Luke started walking through, and I saw he just took a step and he went straight down into the water. And luckily, he had the camera above the water line. He had the instinct to sort of pull it up.
Yeah, I was like, save the footage, save the footage. Go on without me.
I still went in after him because I thought, look, we'll still cross it. so here, because I was recording sound as well, so I was holding all my equipment above my head, trying to walk through this. The more you walked, the more it sucked you down, sort of thing. And luckily, it was sort of a narrow area, and there was someone on the other side to pull us out, because otherwise we would still be there today.
We're going to be chasing that high for the rest of our life.
Yeah. We wish there was someone recording behind the scenes for it, just because it was so dramatic.
I think there's another short film in your future just called Quicksand.
Yeah. That was another thing we didn't know. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was telling my girlfriend this story, and she said, I didn't know quicksand was real. I thought that was something they invented in kids' movies to thought I was going to have to encounter that a lot more in my life than I have as a problem. Yeah. But I was like, no, it's real.
Yeah. It's real. But I want to bring something up about this film that filmmakers do that I really love. And you did it in this film. You bookended this film with the opening and the ending scenes. And with the boat's burning.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
with the opening scene, of course, I already read the log line. And so when I'm looking at the opening scene, I'm like, is he doing that because of? And then from there, the story starts to unfold. And then you come back to that scene at the end. And that goes back to the lack of education that many of these people have in all of these countries, thinking that whatever is touched must be destroyed.
Yeah, we also wanted to tip our hats to the burial customs in Nepal. Some of which would involve like the imagery of death, and when a body when somebody dies, it's quite customary in Nepal to set the body on fire and to push them upon water. So we wanted to suggest that image and that concept with, it was almost like a funeral pyre that he's pushing on the sea. But then there was also the sort of quite Irish mythology of luck and, setting a paper boat on fire and pushing it upon a pond. So there was all these ideas at play with that image, and we knew we needed to punch the audience in the gut with something, and trying to tie those three things together. So, the reason that he's burning the boat might be that, okay, he's trying to burn it because it's been exposed to the disease. He's trying to signal that he doesn't intend on coming back to get his daughter, who he's left at the foot of the leprosy hospital. 3, he's making a wish himself, just like he's encouraged her to do earlier in the film. He's making a wish. And then 4, almost suggesting that this is like a funeral, that he is engaging in and participating in the absence of his daughter, who he has in essence sacrificed to save his other daughters, thinking that that's his only option. So we needed an image, and because fire is so it's so animalistic, it's so primal, fire, that and it's so visual, it's so visually powerful, and that was the one we came up with.
Yeah, and I agree, because when I was watching it, and of course the thought of the audience when they first see it is going to be different when they see it again at the end, because then the
Yeah.
meaning is going to be completely different. And I was like you, I thought of, okay, are the customs in this particular country and others where, like you said, they will put the body in a boat and then they set the thing on fire, and it's like sending it off to eternity. And but for the father here, it was basically not only a cleansing situation, but it was almost him saying goodbye to his daughter, because knowing that she would not no longer be in his presence, it will feel like a death.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I think one of the great strengths of cinema as a medium is it's a visual medium. It's an emotional medium. So that last scene where he's pushing the boat onto the water and he's watching it burn, um, and there's no dialogue. It's just the music is soaring, and we've got this very, very distinctive, violent image, which is also quite spiritual and resonant happening on screen. That's we put all our eggs in the basket of that being enough to convince the audience that this was something worth thinking about, this issue, and learning more about. And so far, we've just been really delighted that our instinct was correct. It's been great to enjoy the amount of success that we've had with the film to date, but ultimately, what the goal is here is to try and bring it as far along as we can, the Oscar trajectory, because the kind of platform that affords not only a short film and Jake and I as short filmmakers, but an issue like this, a cause like this, that people do have the power to get behind and
end the oldest known communicable disease.
Yeah, so that's what we're about here. That's what that's what the goal was from day one, and we're delighted to be still in the game.
Yeah, and especially this year of films and short films, I have seen more social impact films this year than the last 2 years. But back into this film, and I hope I got the count right when I went back to watch certain scenes, but where Dhuckia's father wouldn't hold her hand. That was a very heartbreaking moment. And I think there was at least 2 to 3 times that he did this. And I think the third time was where she had gotten so tired from the day's walk that he didn't even want to pick her up to carry her. And that was so sad. But finally, he did eventually pick her up. It's almost like he just threw caution to the wind. He needed to show some way, somehow, that he really did love his daughter.
Yeah, his fatherly instincts kick in and take over. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's my favorite part of the film, that scene, and it's because of the music actually goes somewhere where you're not expecting it to go. I think the score in the film is a masterpiece. I think a lesser talented score composer than Jake would have just done it sad all the way through. But the fact that there are moments of such hope and jubilation in the score, and that's one of them. When he does sort of take Dhuckia into his arms, um, we're brought to a place of, we forget everything about what we've been told to date about the disease, about the characters, and what we're looking at is the pure instinctual and animalistic urge to just comfort one's own child. And that, I think, is the most powerful image in the film.
It is when he picked her up and then the tear forms in his eyes. I was just like, you know, for a father to make that decision.
Yes.
I mean, in his eyes, he looked at it like a life and death decision.
Yes.
And I felt so sorry for her because even at that moment, she still didn't know.
Yes.
And, so now on the true story side, whatever happened to Dhuckia?
Dhuckia is alive and well. Dhuckia, this story was told to Ken Gibson by Dhuckia herself. Ken met the real life Dhuckia as an older woman, and she had been cured of leprosy at that point. She had not reconnected with her dad. Her dad left her on the steps of the hospital and said he would come back the next day and never did. So this is the story we heard. Now, we didn't get to meet the real life Dhuckia because, I mean, the charity takes the anonymity, for the reasons we've already explained to you, very seriously, because the publicity around their name or who they are is a very, very delicate issue in that part of the world, because this stigma and taboo still does exist, unfortunately. So the hospital with their patients are very, very careful to. So basically, what Ken met the real life Dhuckia, who was cured of leprosy, but who unfortunately hadn't at that point gotten the chance to reconnect with her dad. Now, a lot of the details in the film we have changed in order to for narrative purposes. Like, we're not what we know about the story is the core component of it, and what we didn't know. Or that we sort of took artistic liberties with in order to heighten the emotional power of the story. Those were the things like the fire, the boat itself. But I suppose the relationship that this film has with the truth, and that's what we say it's based on a true story, is that the two are working. The artistic creation is working in tandem and in symbiotic relationship with the core component of the story. And really, in attempting to tell Dhuckia's story, we're trying to tell the story of all the people who don't have a voice, who are suffering from leprosy out there still to this day. So that's the mission of the film, and that's the mission of the Mission to End Leprosy.
Did she ever see the film?
No, we don't know. So we'll have to try and get it to as many eyeballs as possible, so that if she ever does see the film, that we can finally get to meet her.
You know, this film has incredible longevity because
Thank
we're not
you.
going to cure leprosy overnight, but you have a film that raises awareness. And for someone like me that saw it for the first time, and I took the liberty to do some extra research and to realize that we are still dealing with this disease in other parts of the world that are have massive populations. India, Africa, you know, even the regions to where Nepal is, and Latin America. I mean, when I was on their website and realized that Latin America was listed, that shocked me. And
Yeah.
and an area that where the medication should be freely available to all of those that would have it, or the communities to where it's prevalent in. Now, with this film, what has been the audience's reaction to it?
Well, I mean, it's incredible. The cinema is an incredible place. You have a bunch of strangers who sit in the dark and watch something and connect over something on a very fundamental level. So seeing this film in its natural habitat, i.e., in a cinema, has been amazing. And hearing complete strangers come up to us afterwards and tell us how much they were moved by it. That's what it's all about. That's what we're trying to do in our careers as filmmakers, is to establish that and succeed in making that connection with an audience. And we've played in many places around the world. This film was officially selected for the Nepal International Film Festival. It was played in Trinidad and Tobago. It played in Boston. It actually premiered at the Boston Film Festival. It played in Galway Film Flat and Cork. It played in Portugal, it played in Bulgaria, and no matter where we went and what language the people spoke there, they were all moved by the story, and how simple the story was, but also how resonant the themes are in the story.
Yeah, this is, gentlemen, you created a film that I just hold up in high regard. It
Thank
is
you.
because it is films like this, and like Luke, you said, there is a power about cinema that is unmatched. It's a way to tell a story through the lens of the camera. In Jake's case, through the music score, the actors, the dialogue. And the greatest thing about this film is not 1 second in this film is wasted. The dialogue is precise, it's placed correctly. And like you said, you waited to get the right actors to fulfill the two main parts, and you did. And which just leads to the fact that the ending becomes very heartbreaking because of the actors that you chose. So everything about this film definitely deserves to be Oscar qualified, and being a multi award winner around the world. But more importantly, this is a film that helps humanity. It helps modern societies in our world to help those less fortunate. And that's what this film does. And ladies and gentlemen, think about this. Every 2 minutes, someone somewhere is diagnosed with leprosy. Even today. I mean, leprosy is the world's oldest disease and still affects millions around the globe. Now, leprosy is primarily spread through prolonged close contact with an untreated person who has leprosy, but especially through respiratory droplets. Now, casual contact like shaking hands does not lead to transmission, and people are considered non infectious after starting appropriate treatment for leprosy. Now, in the poorest communities of the world where leprosy and other neglected diseases are prevalent, many people do not have access to appropriate health care. The mission to end leprosy works with local communities, hospitals, NGOs, and ministries of health to map disease while improving detection and treatment. Now, the mission to end leprosy is a global network of organizations sharing a passion to end the oldest known disease in human history. So if you want to help them out, go to tmtel.org. It'll be on the bottom of your screen to learn more. And Luke and Jake Morgan's Oscar-qualified short film, The Boat, is a true story filmed in Nepal. Again, the cinematography is beautiful. The music score plays right into every movement in this film and within every scene to tell the story, filling in the blanks between dialogue. The storytelling is direct and to the point. It is heartwarming and tragic at the same time. A parent's nightmare in countries of the world that lack access to life-saving treatments. Look, I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but this film shows us that we can all help to bring much more happier endings to millions around the globe. And I want to thank you, Luke and Jake, for sharing this incredible short film with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on, Ward.
Hey, you're very welcome, and good luck in your Oscar run. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this one.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for watching. And as for me, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.